Mike Barnacle. I nearly fell off my chair in the makeup room when you ran a soundbite on Way Too Early, and she was talking about running for president, that she's thinking about it, and you cracked a joke, and you said something like, that'll be fun to watch. Her thinking.
Oh, her thinking process, that would be interesting to watch. You know, Sarah Palin, it's the reason you have delete buttons on your email, not to read the emails that come in. When you say that hopey, changey stuff, she's never going to be president. She's just never going to be president, because we don't want someone just like us to be president. Now, she's captured a mood, and she's very good at it. You're absolutely right. I think one of the biggest dilemmas the Tea Party is going to have, or actually the Democrats are going to have, is recognizing the fact that a lot of the Tea Party people, a lot of them, might be Democrats. And the threat the Tea Party poses is to both parties.
Yes.
Because of their independence. And if Democrats don't realize that some of what the Tea Party people are saying applies to Republicans as well as Democrats, they're going to equally going to be in trouble.
Mike, I understand what you're saying. I know some of those 1,000 people in that room listening to that speech were Democrats or have been Democrats. What's important to remember, though, is that in future elections, they're not going to be voting Democratic. They're just not. They're going to vote either that
is the story.
Or conservative or libertarian or Republican. They ain't going to be voting Democratic. They're going to be voting for Scott Brown.
Well, they voted for Scott Brown in Massachusetts.
And they will.
And for Chris Christie in Jersey, and for McDonnell in Virginia. So when they get into the voting booth, you know, it's almost like if I'm anti-Obama and I'm worried about spending, and I walk into a voting booth, I am a Tea Party. Do you know what I mean?
Mark Halpern, is there a third-party wave brewing? Is it real?
It's real, and there for someone who has a lot of money that they could spend tens of millions on a campaign, and who had real ideas about how to unite left and right, because there is commonality, for instance, going after Wall Street. I see no such person. Can I say 3 other reasons why today Sarah Palin could never be president besides that? One is that Republican elites behind her back think she'd be horrible for the party. 2 is she's not appealing to anybody but a narrow slice of American life, and she's heading more and more in that direction based on her rhetoric. And finally, and I think best for the country, she has no ideas. She stands for nothing specific. To go into an event like that with the opportunity to say, I hear you, disaffected Democrats,
here's where we need to be going.
Here's where we need to go. Great opportunity. She wasn't woken up and kidnapped and flown to this event. It's been on her schedule for a long time. To come in so ill-prepared for both the event and the interview with no ideas, I think forfeits any claim on being a credible national leader right now.
I agree. The speech had, unless I missed it, not one idea, which is kind of for $100 grand. Oh, but she made a lot of money. I think she wants to give it back, but that's a little iffy. All right, coming up.
That was a cynical laugh, Michael.
We're going to talk more about Sarah Palin and those comments about a possible.
Yeah, I think it's a very big deal, because she made it clear that whether or not she's just doing this to increase her lecture fees or her political clout, she's going to be a major player in the midterms. We know that already. She was in Texas for Rick Perry yesterday. She's going to go to Searchlight, Nevada against Harry Reid. She's going to be all over the country. But she also made it very clear on Fox News, where she is a paid commentator, in her interview with Chris Wallace yesterday, that she is leaving the door open for a run for the presidency. And I talked to Ed Gillespie, you know, after he was on Meet the Press yesterday and some of the reporting we were doing this weekend. She could really be, even in a competitive primary race, she could be the first social media candidate who gets by a lot of the screen, a lot of the filtering, by doing, you know, Facebook and Twitter and these controlled appearances. They're building a studio for her in her kitchen in Wasilla, the Fox folks are. And if she's on every day and reaching big audiences or in key moments, she doesn't have to face the questioning and the fact-checking. Not that we're not going to do it, you know, and I frankly misspoke yesterday morning on the Today Show. I said she doesn't have to face fact-checking. She does. It's just that it's a lot harder to get at all of those inconsistencies that you were referring to.
Chuck Todd, what do you hear behind the scenes at the White House? Do you suspect this might be a candidate that they would love to run against in 2012, Sarah Palin?
Well, I think they would, and I think that largely, though, they really, when they want to raise her profile because they think it suits their purposes, I think they do that. But Joe, this is, as you've been pointing out, this is a story about how the fact that she's dominating the Republican Party externally right now, and there's a whole bunch of people behind the scenes that wish she weren't there, don't know how to get rid of her, don't know how to push her out of the way without alienating a huge chunk of the party's base. And it's fascinating to watch because she doesn't seem to be wanting to take the next steps. I think there would be some in the Republican Party that would sort of have some patience with her because of her popularity if she were willing to do the next steps on the policy front, if she were willing to do the next steps on the party building front. She doesn't seem to be wanting to do that. She just seems to wanting to enjoy the spotlight and the celebrity aspect of all this.
Well, you know, Chuck, you had said a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans wish you'd just go away. A lot of conservative leaders that I talk to, they say, well, you know, she can stick around, obviously, she's going to, but we just wish that she would read up a little bit on the issue. She speaks in such generalities. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Chuck or Andrea, but at the end, after Chris Wallace interviewed her, he did a collective eye roll for all of his friends to let them know that, here we go, let's watch him. So this is the end, and then he comes out of the Palin interview after he asks her to come back, and then he just sort of does, look at that look.
Wow.
It's kind of like there, like that, okay. Listen, I don't know how to say this tactfully, but I'm going to try because I do not want to be dragged out and burned at the stake. But she really just seems to have a real problem expressing herself in the way top-tier presidential candidates express themselves.
Well, let me just make a suggestion here. She really went hard after Barack Obama, and she did it, you know, on Ronald Reagan's birthday, and she invoked the memory of Ronald Reagan. It would have been his 99th birthday. But as tough as Reagan was as a competitor in 1980, and I covered that campaign, the sarcasm and the sort of the mean, snarky quality of some of her shots at Obama was different from the sort of happy, optimistic face of the Reagan conservatives. That said, she went after him on the teleprompter issue. You know, we need more, you know, we need somebody that doesn't forget the exact words, just use a teleprompter, gives a great speech and uses a teleprompter. And then it was noted by Gawker that she looked down at her hand during the Q&A, and that on her hand, you know, she had written her top 3 points: energy and budget cuts and optimism. So I figured I would do the same thing today, just in case the prompter broke.
There you go.
I knew that I was going to be on with Chuck and Mika.
This is going around.
But then I saw, Joe, that you were over on the Today Show, so I figured I had to cross you out and put Chuck in. But it's a great deal. I mean, if you can put all your policy pronouncements on your hand.
I can tell you, though, obviously, writing crib notes on your hand and reading from a teleprompter, 2 different things totally. But, Chuck, I just wonder, speaking of Ronald Reagan, am I being critical of Sarah Palin's inability to dig deep the same way that Reagan's critics were in 79 and 80? There is, by the way, no comparison between the two. Let me just say that right now. But you know what? Reagan was called a buffoon for 4 years, and then they woke up on election night 1980, and it was a landslide.
But there was a big difference that Chris Wallace even brought up. Ronald Reagan didn't quit.
Right.
You know, he didn't quit when it was tough to govern California, when it was politically unpopular to govern California, and when he lost the Republican nomination the first time. You know, I think, look, the fact is her Republican primary opponents, if she ran, and I don't believe she will eventually beat her up for this if she really...
Peggy Noonan, let me bring you in here. We've been talking about Reagan. Am I being too tough on Palin? Am I doing exactly what Reagan's critics did in 79 and 80?
No, I don't think so. Reagan's critics deliberately misunderstood him. They didn't want to think. Remember, conservatives were all intellectually marginalized in those days, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Reagan liked to stay home and read the Federalist Papers.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? He was a very serious man. In 1980, as Andrea was mentioning, she covered that campaign. He didn't like to talk about Mr. Carter, and he never personally put him down. He would refer to my opponent and
this
how
is
he's
totally
wrong
different.
about the issues. So I did not find that to be Reagan-esque. I find Reagan to be
Yeah.
Reagan-esque.
Okay. Well, very good. And you said Reagan was a very serious man, Peggy. So both of us are not dragged out and burned. Both of us true conservatives.
Well,
I will not ask you whether Sarah Palin is a serious
We'll
candidate.
leave it there. Andrea and Chuck, thank you very much. We appreciate it.